it's working. All right. Let's see. I sent out notice to everybody. So many text messages every day. I don't know how I keep up with them. There we go. Alrighty. We are ready to roll. Okay, let's get the guitar out. All right, something simple tonight. Jaya Rana Madhava Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Rana Madhava Jaya Kunja Behari Gopi Jana Padava Jaya Kiri Varadahuri Jaya Kiri Varadahuri Gopi Jana Padava Jaya Kiri Varadahuri Jaya Kiri Varadahuri Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Kunja Behari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Rana Madhava Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Rana Madhava Jaya Kunja Behari Bichana Lapa Jaya Kiri Varunade Jaya Kiri Varunade Bichana Lapa Jaya Kiri Varunade Kiri Varunade Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Kunja Behari Jaya Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Chako, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Parvakacharya, all Suteta, Satashi, Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai, Param Say Kaho Shri Krishna Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shitvaita Gadadha, Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopinath, Shyam Kunda, Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturam Ki Jai, Jagannatha Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So let us start with the class, or the reading of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. It's good to see everybody. So let's see, any announcements for today? No announcements. Everybody seems to be all right. So Om Gana Timadanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Okay, here we go. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda. So this particular chapter, as we mentioned many times before, is called Chapter 22. No, it's actually, the title of the chapter is The Process of Devotional Service, and it's Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Sanatana Goswami in Varanasi. So now we're hearing about Vaishnava Association and Vaishnava Association, which means non-Vaishnava Association. So, text 118. Vaishnava Sangha Tyaga Bahu Shishya Nakariba Bahu Granta Kalabhyasa Vyakyana Variba. The 12th item is to give up company of non-devotees. 13. One should not... We actually read this already. Okay. Actually, we did read that whole thing. So, 119. Hanila be samas shodakdira vasha nahaiba anya deva anya shastra ninda nakariba. The devotee should treat loss and gain equally. How do you treat loss and gain equally? Well, just see that Krishna is behind it. Krishna says in the Gita, Yomam Pashati Sarvatra, Sarvam Jamai Pashati Tashaham Napranashami Sachame Napranashati. One should see Krishna everywhere and everything, and one will never be lost to Krishna. So it's just Krishna's arrangement. Of course, if you do something foolish, that's not Krishna's arrangement, that's your stupidity. 16. The devotee should not be overwhelmed by lamentation. Lamentation means I lost something or I couldn't get something. Hankering, like that, hankering for something, lamenting for someone. Kankshati nishkokshati. Was it Brahmabhuta Prasanapan Sochati Nakankshati? Sochati Nakankshati. Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu. Samak Sarveshu. One who is actually spiritually situated doesn't hanker or lament. Because you see, Krishna's arranging everything. Krishna takes things away. Time to leave the body, it's time. Someone else leaves the body, it's time. And we lament, of course, losing the association of a great devotee. That we do lament. The devotee should not worship demigods, nor should he disrespect them. Let me unpack that a little bit. So, one should not worship demigods independently. One should respect the demigods because they're servants of Krishna. That's all. But worship them in terms of being independent controllers. We respect them just like we respect any honorable person who comes into the room. Any devotee who comes in, we respect, we can worship them, but not in the same worship sense that we worship God. Similarly, the devotee should not study or criticize other scriptures. Very important. Vishnu Vaishnava Ninda Gramya Vartana Shaniba Pranimatre Manovokye Udvegana Diva. The devotee should not hear Lord Vishnu or his devotees blaspheming. That should be intolerable for us, because if we love someone, we should not tolerate them being criticized or blasphemed. You just go away. 19. The devotees should avoid reading or hearing newspapers or mundane books that contain stories of love affairs between men and women or subjects palatable to the senses. Because I haven't read newspapers, I read CNN, which wasn't existing when Prabhupada or the Goswamis wrote this, but I don't read about love affairs between men and women. I read about love affairs between Radha and Krishna, but not in the newspaper. Neither by mind or words should the devotee cause anxiety to any living entity, regardless of how insignificant he may be. That's really important. So in other words, mind or words or body actually should devotee cause anxiety. Even an insignificant ant should be kind to all living entities. As I gave the example, the other day there was a cockroach in my shower, and I did not say anything unkind to him. I simply took him out. And he gave him shelter, and I felt great love for him. The first 10 items are do's, the second 10 items are don'ts. Thus, the first 10 items give direct action, the second 10 items give indirect action. In other words, what not to do. Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Pujana, Vandana, Paricharya, Dasya, Sakya, Admani, Vedanam. 9 processes of devotional service. After one is established in devotional service, the positive actions are hearing, of course, about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna, worshiping Krishna, praying to Krishna, serving Krishna or serving Krishna's devotees, accepting servitorship, becoming a friend, and surrendering fully. Agrain Richa Gita Vyapti Dandavanati Abhyutana Anubraja Tirtha Grihe Gati. One should also dance before the deity. Yes, that's very important. Sing before the deity. Wow. Sing before the deity. Open one's mind to the deity. This is actually very important. So when you go before the deity, you should reveal your mind to the deity and pray to the deities. I remember when I first was visiting a Hare Krishna temple in 1969 or 70 or something like that, whatever. It was the Boston temple. I went into the temple, and the devotees had their ceremony that every week, each devotee individually would go up to the deities and tell the deities, privately, not in front of all the devotees, but he was in front of all the devotees, but the devotees couldn't hear what the devotee was saying, and tell the devotees what they had done that week and what they were requesting from the deity. And this way was a very personal exchange. 13, offer obeisances to the deity, obviously. 14, stand up before the deity and the spiritual master just to show them respect, obviously. 15, follow the deity or the spiritual master. That doesn't mean that wherever the spiritual master goes, you just become a little groupie. But that's in the temple room, you just follow them. 16, visit different places of pilgrimage or go to see the deity in the temple. These are items of devotional service. Parikrama stava pyata japa sankirtana dupa malya gandha mahaprasada bhojana. One should, 17, circumambulate the temple, recite various prayers, chant softly, that means japa, chant congregationally, that means kirtan, smell the incense and flower garlands offered to the deity, and 22, eat the remnants of food offered to the deity. That's prasadam. Who's going to deny that? Aratrika mahotsava shimurti darshana nija priya dana dhyana tadiya sevana. One should attend arti festivals, see the deity, present what is very dear to oneself to the deity. What dear is oneself, one's body, one's mind, one's words. I give you all to you, Radha Golokananda. Meditate on the deity, and 27 to 30, serve those things related to the Lord. And those things are like Tadiya, Tulasi Vaishnava Mathura Bhagavata, Echarira Sevaya Krishnera Abhimata. Tadiya means the things related to the Lord, means Tulsi leaves, the devotees of Krishna, the birthplace of Krishna, and the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is very eager to see his devotees serve these 4 things, Tulasi, Vaishnavas, Mathura, and Bhagavatam. Remember that. After item 26, meditation, 27th is to serve Tulsi, the 28th is to serve the Vaishnavas, the 29th is to live in Mathura, the birthplace of Lord Krishna, and the 30th is to read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, daily. Krishnarte akila chesta tat kripa valokana janma dinari mahotsava lana bhakta ganda. One should perform all endeavors for Krishna. In other words, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give away should be done as an offering to Krishna, as Krishna says in the Gita. One should look forward to his mercy. In other words, that's called Ashavanda, that Krishna will give me mercy even though I'm not qualified Krishna will help me. He loves me. 33. One should partake of various ceremonies with devotees, ceremonies like Lord Krishna's birthday or Ramachandra's birthday. Anyway, Sarvata Sharanapati Kartikari Vrata Chatushashti Angahe Parama Mahatva. Mahatva. I pronounced that wrong. One should surrender to Krishna in all respects. 35. One should observe particular vows like Caritamrta. These are some of the 64 items of devotional service. Very important items. Sadhu Sangha Namakirtan Bhagavata Shravana Pathuravasa Srimurtira Shradaya Sevana. One should associate with devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside in Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. So these are the most important principles. Associate with devotees, chant the holy name, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside in Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. 5 most important items. Sakala sadhana shreshta he panchanga Krishna prema janmaya he panchera alpasanga. These 5 limbs of devotional service are the best of all. Even a slight performance of these five awakens love for Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out that there are 35 items up to the point of observing special vows in the month of Kartika. To these 35 items, another 4 are added, namely tilak on different parts of the body, and I have tilak on, writing the names of the Lord all over the body. I haven't done that. Accepting the deity's garland and accepting Caritamrta. Happy to do that. These 4 items are understood to be included by Kaviraj Goswami within archana worship of the deity. Although these items are not mentioned here, they are to be added to the previous 35 items. Thus, the total number becomes 39. To these 39 should be added 5 others: association with devotees, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, reading Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, residing in Mathura, the birthplace of Krishna, and worshiping the deity with great respect and veneration. The 39 items plus these 5 come to a total of 44. If we add the previous 20 items to these 44, the total number comes to 64. Very auspicious number, 64. The 5 items mentioned above repeat previously mentioned items in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Rupa Goswami states, Anganam panchakasyasya purva vilikitasya cha nikila shaishtra bodhaya punarapyatra shamsanam. The glorification of these 5 items, association with devotees, chanting the holy name, and so on, is to make known the complete superiority of these 5 practices of devotional service. The 64 items of devotional service include all the activities of the body, mind, and senses. Thus, the 64 items engage one in devotional service in all respects. Shraddha Visheshata Priti Shrimurter Angri Sevane. With love and faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. This verse and the following 2 verses are found in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1:290-92. Shrimad Bhagavatar Tanam Ashvado Rasikai Saha Sajitaya Sheye Snigde Sado Sango Swato Vare. One should taste the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees, and one should associate with the devotees who are more advanced than oneself and who are endowed with a similar type of affection for the Lord. This is self-explanatory. The words sajati yashaye snigde siddhal sangha swatovare are very important. One should not associate with professional Bhagavatam reciters. A professional Bhagavatam reciter is one who is not in disciplic succession or one who has no taste for bhakti yoga. Simply on the strength of grammatical knowledge and word jugglery, professional reciters maintain their bodies and their desires for sense gratification by reading Srimad Bhagavatam One should also avoid those who are averse to Lord Vishnu and his devotees, those who are Mayavadis, those who offend the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, those who simply dress as Vaishnavas or so-called Goswamis, and those who make a business by selling Vedic mantras and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to maintain their bodies. One should not try to understand Srimad Bhagavatam from such materialistic people. According to the Vedic injunctions, Yasha Devi Para Bhakti, the Srimad Bhagavatam can be recited only by one who has unflinching faith in the lotus feet of Krishna and his devotee, the spiritual master. One should try to understand Srimad Bhagavatam from the spiritual master. The Vedic injunction states, Bhaksha Bhagavatam Grayam Na Budya Na Chati Kriya. One has to understand Srimad Bhagavatam through the process of devotional service and by hearing the recitation of a pure devotee. These are the injunctions of the Vedic literature, Shruti and Smriti. Those who are not in disciplic succession and who are not pure devotees cannot understand the real mysterious objective of Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So what Prabhupada is referring to here are reciters, professional reciters of the Bhagavatam, which Prabhupada talks about. And they do these things called Bhagavad Saptahas. That means Saptaha, 7 days of Bhagavatam recital. So they are taking or doing it for 7 days because it's an imitation of who? Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. Parikshit Maharaj, who heard the Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days, and then he passed away, and Shukadeva Goswami, who spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days, and he didn't pass away. So this is an imitation of that, and primarily they concentrate on the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the canto dealing with Krishna's intimate pastimes in Vrindavan, and they are very emotive when they're doing this. They're like dramatists. They break out in song. It would be like if I was giving a class of the Chaitanya Charitamrta and I say, Shruti and Smriti, Shruti and Smriti. Anyway, I'm not going to do it. They break out in song and they make it like a real dramatic performance. It's really interesting to watch, which I've done, but it's bogus. And for several reasons, not the method that the sages would give Srimad Bhagavatam class in. Number 2, generally those who do it are not pure devotees. They're doing it for some ulterior purpose. They're doing it for pecuniary gain. Pecuniary means financial gain, to maintain their families. Actually, in the Jaiva Dharma, one devotee asked his guru, I'm reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is how I'm making my living. And the guru says, no. You can recite Srimad Bhagavatam, but you can't make your living doing that. You should make your living doing something very simple that is obviously, business or something like that. But do not make your living by recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, because it contaminates your consciousness. You're doing Srimad Bhagavatam, you're reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, and you're thinking, let me entertain people, even subtly or psychologically or subconsciously. You're thinking, let me entertain people so they'll give more money or they'll come to more of my performances. It's like a performance. Okay. Ooh, sorry. That was a mistake. Let me page up here. Namasankirtan Shriman Mathura Mandale Stiti. One should congregationally chant the holy name of the Lord and reside in Vrindavan. So, of course, if one can't reside in Vrindavan on this earth planet, one can make one's home like Vrindavan. Like I have pictures of Krishna, even though I have stayed in an apartment here near the university, I have pictures of Krishna everywhere on my TV here, which I can show you in 1 second. I think I can change the camera here so you can see. What do I have on the TV? Not some mundane show. Hold on a second. You can see. Okay, let me go up a little bit. There's my TV. And you see on the TV, every few seconds, there's a change in pictures of the deities. You can't see it too clearly, but you can actually see. So this is making my place like Vrindavan. And there's all sorts of pictures of Krishna and all sorts of wonderful things here that were arranged by a great devotee who did the decoration. And we'll not mention who that great devotee is, but a great saintly personality. Okay, let's go back here. So reside in Vrindavan. So Narottam Das Thakur is sung. Shri Gautamandala Bhumi Yeva Jane Chintamani Tadahaya Brajabhumi Vasa. Hold on. One who understands the transcendental nature of Navadvip and the surrounding area where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enacted his pastimes resides always in Vrindavan. That's interesting. One who understands the transcendental nature of Navadvip always resides in Vrindavan. Similarly, living in Jagannath Puri is as good as living in Vrindavan. The conclusion is that Navadvip Dham, Jagannath Puri Dham, and Vrindavan Dham is identical. However, if one goes to Mathura Mandala Bhumi, that means Vrindavan Dham, for sense gratification or to make a livelihood, he commits an offense and is condemned. Whoever does so must be penalized in the next life by becoming a hog or a monkey in Vrindavan Dham, and there's a lot of them there. After taking on such a body, the offender is liberated in the next life. That's a quick way to go back to Godhead. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks that residing in Vrindavan with a view to enjoy sense gratification surely leads a so-called devotee to a lower species. Oh my God. Duru adbhuta viresmen shadadures tu panchake yatra swalpo pi sambandha sadyam bhava janmane. The power of these five principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. Wow, so powerful. This verse is also found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-238. Ekangya sadhye satte kaya sadhe bahuanga nishto hoile upachaya primera taranga. When one is firmly fixed in devotional service, whether he executes one or many processes of devotional service, the waves of love of Godhead will awaken. The 9 processes of devotional service are Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasham, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. Bhagavatam 7.5.23, see text 121 of this chapter. Give me one second. Close the curtains. Okay, alrighty. Text 135. Egange Siripaila Bahu Bhakta Kada Ambarishari Bhaktera Bahu Angasadana. There are many devotees who execute only one of the 9 processes of devotional service, talking about hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Nevertheless, they get ultimate success. Devotees like Maharaj Ambarish execute all 9 items and they get ultimate success. So, this is a very nice verse. Shri Vishnu Shavane Parikshid Abhavat Payasaki Kirtane. Whoops. What's that noise outside the house? Palada Smarane Tadangri Bhajane Lakshmi Patu Bhujane Akruras Twav Bivandane Kapipatir Dasyeta Sakyir Juna Sarva Swatma Nivedane Padiradbhuta Krishnaptiresham Para. Maharaj Parikshit. So this is describing the persons who are considered to be the acharyas or examples of each of these processes of devotional service. Maharaj Parikshit attained the highest perfection, shelter at Krishna's lotus feet, simply by hearing about Lord Vishnu. Of course, that's hearing. Next, we'll get to chanting. Shukadeva Goswami attained perfection simply by reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj, so that's speaking. Prahlad Maharaj attained perfection by remembering the Lord. Obviously, that's remembering. The goddess of fortune attained perfection by massaging the transcendental legs of Mahavishnu, Padasevanam. Maharaj Aprithu attained perfection by worshipping the deity, that's Archanam, and Akrura attained perfection by offering prayers unto the Lord. Praying. Brajankal Ji Hanuman attained perfection by rendering service to the Lord. Ramchandra and Arjuna attained perfection simply by being Krishna's friend. Bali Maharaj attained perfection by dedicating everything to the lotus feet of Krishna. This verse appears in the Pajavali and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 265. So this is about Maharaj Ambarish. Savayamana Krishna Padaravindo Vachamsi Vagunta Gunan Varnane Kauravare Mandira Marjanish Dadishu Shutim Jakara Chutat Sat Katodaye Mukunda Lingalaya Darshane Drsho Tadbrichagatra Sparshenga Sangamam Granam Chatatpada Saroja Sorabe Srimatulasha Rasanam Tad Arpite Pado Harir Kshetra Padanu Sarpanhe Shiro Rishikesha Padabi Vandane Kamam Jadashe Natu Kama Kamyaya Yatotama Shloka Janashraya Ratahi. A long verse about Ambarish Maharaj. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. Mind, his words in describing the spiritual world and his supreme personality of Godhead, his hands in cleansing and washing the Lord's temple, his ears in hearing the topics about the Supreme Lord, his eyes in seeing the deity of Lord Krishna in the temple, his body in embracing Vaishnavas or touching their lotus feet, his nostrils in smelling the aroma of tulsi leaves offered to Krishna's lotus feet, his tongue in tasting food offered to Krishna, his legs in going to places like pilgrimage like Vrindavan and Mathura, or to the Lord's temple, his head in touching the lotus feet of the Lord and offering him obeisances, and his desires in serving the Lord faithfully. In this way, Maharaj Ambarish engaged his senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he awakened his dormant loving propensity for the Lord's service. You notice he engaged everything in Krishna's service. Very, very important. So as much as possible, we should engage whatever senses, and of course our mind, if we have any sense in our mind. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18-20. Kamatyagi Krishna Bhaje Shastra Hagyamani Devarishi Pitradikera Kabunahi Rini. If a person gives up all material desires and completely engages in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, as enjoined in the revealed scriptures, he is never indebted to the demigod sages or forefathers or anyone else. He has no more debts. After birth, every man is indebted to so many ways. He's indebted to the demigods for their supplying necessities like air, light, and water. When one takes advantage of the Vedic literatures, one becomes indebted to great sages like Vyasadeva, Narada, Devala, and Asita. When one takes birth in a particular family, he becomes indebted to his forefathers and his foremothers. We are even indebted to common living entities like cows from whom we take milk. Because we accept service from so many animals, we become completely indebted. However, if one is completely engaged in the Lord's devotional service, he is absolved of all debts. This is confirmed in the following verse, quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:5-41. I just want to make clear that in your ordinary dealings, you cannot use this as an excuse. In other words, let's say you owe money for your water bill or your electric bill or your mortgage payments or your car payments. Don't use this as an excuse. You should pay those debts. Don't be foolish. Devarshi Bhutapta, and this is a verse that actually verifies this from the Bhagavatam. Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam Nakin Kurunayam Rini Jirajan Saratmana yaksharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parivritya karatam. One who has given up all material duties and taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Mukunda, who gives shelter to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, or even his forefathers who have passed away. And this is a verse that I often quoted when I joined the Hare Krishna movement. And my mother said, "You have a debt to me." And I say, "I'm paying the debt by becoming Krishna conscious." And lo and behold, when she left her body, I paid the debt because she was able to remember Krishna. And she was so grateful. And now Krishna's taking care of her. It is said, "Adyapanam pramayagya pitriyagyastu tarpanam Omo Daiva Balir Volturu Riyagyo Titipujanam." By offering oblations with ghee, one satisfies the demigods. By studying the Vedas, one performs Brahma Yagya, which satisfies the great sages. By offering oblations of water before one's forefathers, one performs Pitri Yagya. By offering tribute, one performs Bhuta Yagya. Oh my God, Bhutas, they're like ghosts. By properly receiving guests, one performs Ri Yagya. These are the 5 yagas that liquidate the 5 kinds of indebtedness to the demigods, great sages, forefathers, living entities, and common men. Therefore, one has to perform these 5 kinds of yagas, but when one takes to the Sankirtan Yaga, the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one does not have to perform any other yaga. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni made a statement about the systematic performance of Bhagavad Dharma in connection with statements previously made by the 9 Yogendras before Maharaj Nimi. The sage Karabhajana Rishi explained the 4 incarnations of the 4 yugas, and at the end, in this verse, text 141, he explained the position of Krishna's pure devotee and how he is absolved of all debts. Pretty nice. But still, be nice to your parents. Vididharma chari bhaje Krishnara chanana nishida papachare tadakavu nahe mana. Although the pure devotee does not follow all the regulated principles of Varanasam, he worships the lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, he naturally has no tendency to commit sin. Now, I just want to make a comment on this. The pure devotee will follow the regulated principles of Varanasam if it's a question of setting an example for others. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tat tat evetaro janaha. That as a leader or some great personality acts, then other people follow him. All the world follows, in fact. So the pure devotee will follow the regulated principles of Varnashram when it is appropriate insofar as his compassionate mood, his compassionate mission. So it's not that he neglects the principles. The Varnashram institution is planned in such a way that one will not commit sinful activities. Material existence continues due to sinful activity. When one acts sinfully in this life, he gets a suitable body for the next life. When one acts sinfully, he takes on another material body. In this way, one is continuously under the influence of material nature. Bhagavad Gita, Purusha Prakriti Sto Hi Bhunte Prakriti Jan Gunan Karanam Gunasangasya Sadasad Yoni Janmashu. The living entity of material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. It's actually quite an important verse, one which I often quote. The cause of our entanglement is guna sangha. We've decided to associate. Just like if you go to a bar, you've decided to associate with certain people. And those people, of course, are the mode of ignorance. So I've decided to associate with devotees. Due to our association with the modes of material nature, we get different types of bodies, good and bad. One cannot be liberated from the cycle of birth and death, known as transmigration of the soul, unless one is completely freed from all sinful activities. The best process, therefore, is to take to Krishna consciousness. Jai. one cannot take to Krishna consciousness without being freed from all sinful activities. So there's that catch-22. In other words, to take to Krishna consciousness, you have to be freed from sinful activities. And the only process of freeing you from sinful activities is Krishna consciousness. So therefore, you have the pure devotee who intercedes on your behalf. That's the only way. Naturally, one who is very serious about Krishna consciousness is freed from all sinful activity. Consequently, a devotee is never inclined to commit sins. If one is pressured by the law or obligation to give up sinful activity, one cannot do so. However, if one takes to Krishna consciousness, he can very easily give up all sinful activity. This is confirmed herein. So, as far as the restrictions in Varanasam Dharma are concerned, there are restrictions so the people, as Prabhupada said, don't commit sinful activities. Also, they're there to help people engage according to their psychophysical nature. But there are restrictions that restrict one from committing sinful activities. But if one doesn't commit sinful activities because he's higher spiritually, then one doesn't need to think about the restrictions, although he's still following the restrictions. I'll give you an example. Okay, here's an example. Let's say if I obeyed the speed limit while I was driving my car, I wouldn't need, or we wouldn't need someone to enforce the speed limit, because I would be driving, following the speed limit for safety's sake. That's actually the reason for speed limits, right? As far as I understand, the reason that there are speed limits on highways and speed limits on all sorts of roads is to protect you and to protect other people. So if I have the right consciousness of protecting myself and protecting other people and not acting crazy, then, and everybody had that right consciousness, you wouldn't need speed limits. Except in cases where the government is trying to make money by catching as many people as possible and making people's lives miserable. Anyway, so you only need laws or restrictions where people are doing those things. I mean, and let me give you another example, okay? Here's the 10 Commandments, right? Everybody knows the 10 Commandments. Honor the Lord thy God, that's the first commandment. But there's commandments like, what? Do not commit adultery. Honor your father and mother. So what can you understand? That people were naturally inclined to commit adultery, and naturally people were inclined not to honor their father and mother and guru. So because of that, the injunction had to be made, right? When you find injunctions, restrictions, those injunctions and restrictions indicate those things that they're trying to restrict are going on or were going on, right? I mean, it just makes sense. And if people were higher class, you wouldn't need the 10 Commandments. Like Arjuna is not told in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, you should honor your father and mother. Of course, Krishna does say that one of the austerities of speech is to, austerities of bodies or physical things, is to honor your father and mother. But he's not stressing that as a restriction or injunction like that. Because Arjuna is already doing that. He's higher class. He doesn't tell Arjuna, you don't have illicit sex. Of course, Krishna does say in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm sex life according to the rules and regulations. But he doesn't give Arjuna that restriction because Arjuna is already following. He's higher class. And I've also seen, in many cases, when I'm giving an initiation to people who have no inclination to break the regulated principles, I don't have to go through those regulated principles. You know, let's say there's some 80-year-old lady who's been married her whole life. I'm not going to ask her to recite the 4 regulated principles. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for her to say, no illicit sex, no intoxication, never taken intoxication, never eaten meat her whole life, doesn't gamble. So, you know, someone who doesn't have that inclination, you don't really have to go through those 4 regulated principles. Otherwise, you go through them. I mean, with the Americans, you definitely have to go through the 4 regulator principles, probably bring a few more out. And in Fiji is another place where I spent some time, you have to have 5 regulator principles. One is, or at least define intoxication or kava as part of intoxication. So you really have to be specific about things sometimes, so that people don't say, well, you didn't mention that particular thing. Okay, so let's stop now, take some questions. I got to end exactly on the hour because I have an engagement. And actually, there's a question right away. Let me unmute you all first before I take the question in the chat window. Okay, you're allowed to unmute. So let me take the question in the chat window first. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. In Vrindavan and other places, we all need to eat and sleep comfortably so that we are fit during your stay and try to stay focused. What does it mean by with a view of sense gratification? That means accepting more than necessary. Eating and sleeping in the Dham is also considered sense gratification. No. If you use the Dham for sense gratification, does eating and sleeping in the Dham also considered sense gratification? No way. Otherwise, I wouldn't go to the Dham. Because we have no tendency to austerities overall, is this also called sense gratification? No. We all have certain needs. Everybody's needs are different. Like when I was first a brahmachari, then I was able to sleep on the floor with practically no covering or a sleeping bag or something like that. But now that I am more advanced, now that I have an older body, I have different necessities, different dietary necessities. I mean, when I was first a brahmachari, I could eat anything that was cooked in the temple. And I didn't worry about my health at that point, and I was pretty healthy. But then, they're moving furniture or something on the other side of the wall. But then, now that I'm older, I have to take more precautions, more soft bed. I do rest on a bed at night. And, I just have to be practical. I do have to make some extra endeavor to exercise. And, so everybody has a different amount of sense gratification just to keep the mind peaceful. But this sense gratification is not the same as the sense gratification mentioned in those verses. We need a certain amount just so we can be peaceful. Here's a funny thing. It was funny. Gopal said, I remember staying with you in the Baltimore temple 30 years ago, and the temple authorities offered you a bed, and I refused. I was a sannyasi then, too. I've been a sannyasi since 1978. So 30 years ago, I was a young guy, and I slept on the floor. Yep. Here's another question in the chat window. Okay, I was 30 years old. And the Purport text mentions that, however, if one takes the Krishna consciousness, the byproducts of bhakti, like was saying, byproducts of bhakti, like lust, or byproducts of bhakti. He can easily go all sinful activity. But how can devotees like me become, I understand, victim of the byproducts of bhakti, like the lust, anger, greed? It's indirect. Because it's a very dangerous thing, I understand. That's something mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that one of the causes of anarthas means things you don't want, like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, ego, what you mentioned here, Krishna Chandra. So they come as a byproduct of bhakti, because one performs bhakti, one starts to get some position, respect, And then because of that position of respect, one thinks themselves more important, one thinks themselves to be the controller, one thinks themselves the boss of someone else, and we begin to look down upon other people and other entities too. So that's why it's important to hear Bhagavatam every day, remind ourselves that we're servants of everybody, and be introspective enough. The only way I know how to do that is just keep checking yourself intellectually until you get completely purified. And then you've actually realized it. There's two things. There's jnana and vijnana. Jnana means the knowledge, and with the knowledge you can function on the basis of intelligence. And vijnana means you've realized it, which you've actually transcended even the knowledge platform or the intelligence platform, and are doing everything spontaneously. But right now we're not doing everything spontaneously. We have this knowledge of what lust, anger, and greed are, and we should be able to identify these different things that when they occur. And the solution is just to consider ourselves a servant of everybody. Because obviously we're not thinking, if we're becoming lusty or angry or greedy, like that, we're thinking we're better than other people. We're more important than other people, because it all comes from ego, I and mine. And so when you understand that you're not any more important than anyone else, and especially if one has a very high position, for example, a guru or something like that, you can't think that I'm more important than my disciples. You're not. How are you more important? And just like I was mentioning about that cockroach the other day, I wasn't thinking I was more important than the cockroach. I was thinking the cockroach is just as important as me. No, I'm important to Krishna, but so is the cockroach, so is every living entity, so is the insignificant microbe important to Krishna. So that's the only way I know. That's the intelligence platform, but then as one develops Krishna consciousness, Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Admane Vanupashati, and sees everybody connected to Krishna and everybody is quality one, brothers and sisters, as I mentioned before, then it's out of love, one, from the heart, that one doesn't feel anger or greedy or prestigious, prideful, whatever it is. Important. Good question. So, who else has a question? You got one more question before I have to hit the road. Anybody else want to type a question or ask a question or unmute yourself? I know it's Sunday where many of you are in New Zealand and Australia, so this is the day you get off. And here it is Saturday evening, and I have an appointment. Okay, hold on a second. Another one. Oh, that was just a thank you very much, Gurudev. Okay, so if there's no other questions, it actually is time to go. And so we'll see everybody, same time. Oh, Gopal is thanking me. Same time, same station, and I'm in a university right now, and so I have some preaching service to do, talking to people about Krishna, which is my life and soul. My life and soul is sharing Krishna with others. I love to do that. I would do that 24 hours a day if I could, if this body would permit me. It's the most ecstatic thing. Okay, see everybody later. All glories to His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.